up and running. Welcome. This is Deep 7 Press. This is the channel that focuses on the role-playing games published by Deep 7 Press. My name is Dan. I am going to be the game master for Deep 7's first ever live streaming real play for its role-playing game Airship Daedalus, a deco-punk pulp action adventure game. And before we start that game, we wanted to take a few sessions and meet the players and get to know their characters a little bit. So that's what we're going to do. And I am super excited for this team of players. We've got a nice mix of creative people coming in here to this, a nice mix of experienced, moderate, and no experience on role-playing games. And so I think it's going to be a fun, lively group for an action-packed game. First up tonight, I am joined by the amazing Lisa Coronado, actress, gamer, taco enthusiast. Lisa, how are you doing tonight?
Okay.
Hey!
Take two.
And I just flashed everybody my email while I was trying to resend you the link. So that's fun.
Oh, well.
Nothing private there. Lisa Coronado, you might recognize her as an actor from Z Nation or Twin Peaks. You might have noticed her Twitch stream. It's a Small World, correct?
Yes.
Where she twitches daily. Video games mostly. Lisa, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to get into playing, but I want to talk about you as a player a little bit, because obviously you're a gamer if you're twitching every day, but that's mostly video games on your own stream, correct?
Yes, it totally is. And just a side note, I'm not showing that you're live. Are you not doing it live on Twitch?
I should be live on Twitch.
Well, it's not popping up for me. It says you're offline.
Well, I am online because our dear friend and collaborator Todd Downing is sending me notes to make sure that I also mention you were Evil Hand in the Collectibles.
Oh, weird. Then I must have the wrong... I think I'm hosting probably the wrong channel.
Oh, no.
Okay, I'm not going to worry about hosting right now.
All right.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So you're a gaming fan?
Yes, huge gaming fan. I've been playing games since, since I was probably 6 and played, good old Mario with my brother, and we kind of lived not around a ton of kids, so it was him and I out all the time, and we just played video games from like the time I was 6 on, and then I got into PC games, and then PlayStation 1, and then Xbox came out, and played about a little bit of everything.
As a kid, who was better, you or your brother?
We were both pretty good and super competitive, and if I beat him, he was like banging on the control and so bad. We would taunt each other, and then he got pretty darn good at like shooting games and stuff like that, and I kind of went the more like puzzle-based games route.
Okay, yeah. My wife used to kick her brother's butt in Mortal Kombat, and they would always get angry.
Oh, yeah, we played that. Streets of Rage,
yeah.
Street Fighter, all of it. We could not play cooperatively if one of us could shoot the other one on accident.
Well, when did you get into role-playing games? Have you played many role-playing games? I guess I should ask first.
Yeah. I played D&D in high school, so...
Okay.
In my acting, I got into drama pretty hardcore in 10th grade, and there was a kid that moved from San Francisco, like my junior year, and he was super cool, loved like raves, like all this stuff, and he was super into D&D, and he would host them, and so a bunch of us nerdy actors would get together and play D&D, and I was like, this is the best thing ever.
It is, even though I know how geek culture has exploded over the past 20 years, how D&D has become incredibly popular over the past few years, for someone who came of age in the 70s and 80s, and D&D was a weird nerd thing in your mom's basement, and the whole satanic panic living
We
through
played
that.
in the basement.
Hearing the kid who's hosting that described as really cool is bizarre to me, but that's neat. I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just, it was like another extension of acting to us. It was like improv, but a fantasy setting, so it was
Yeah.
super.
And with the dice setting the rules of the improv. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Well, we're not going to be playing D&D. We're going to be playing Airship Daedalus. And
Yay.
have you played other games besides other role playing games besides Dungeons and Dragons? Or has that been
Uh, yeah. So I've played BattleTech
okay.
with Hyper RPG over on Twitch. I played Masters of the Metaverse
Oh, nice.
with Zombie Orpheus, and then
Mm-hmm.
some of the people from Death from Above. Actually, BattleTech. I think Mitch is the creator of BattleTech.
Uh-huh.
He had a bunch of us over to his house, and we were playing a pulp noir called Justice Inc. And so I have played kind of in this realm a little bit,
Great.
just a couple sessions with the friends getting together. So
Yeah, awesome. That's exactly how role playing games should be played.
yes,
Well, for those who don't know, Airship Daedalus is set in the late 1920s. Our particular game is going to be set in July 1927. We're going to be opening up in San Francisco. And it is designed to really evoke the classic Golden Age comics, the old pulp dime store novels and short stories, and certainly movies. Um, Modern day stuff like Indiana Jones and Rocketeer, as well as the real classics like Flash Gordon, and although we're not going to sci-fi as that, but that kind of thing. We're looking for rollicking action, real good guys and bad guys, adventure kind of stuff. And with that in mind, you created a very unique character here, and I'm really curious. Your character is Lucy Mercier, Canadian World War I nurse, and we're set about 10 years after the Great War ended. So you're a longtime veteran, and you have one particular twist on this character, and go ahead and talk about that, and talk about what sparked that, if you could, please.
Well, it's so funny when you guys were like, what kind of character do you want to play, and be thinking about that, and I was like, instantly I was like, I want to be like, I've been watching a ton of Outlander, so I was like, I want to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And so that kind of started developing, and then I was like, Lisa, you're always playing that like kind of character. What about something kind of assassiny or something really different? And then I was like, what if she's both? What if something happened and she lost consciousness and I'm live? Sorry, children.
No worries. Yeah. Oh, I know.
What if something happened, an event happened in her life, and she gets triggered, and she goes into this assassin mode, and she has no memories of it, and she'll wake up in weird places, having no idea. And so I was like, what if we create this character, and she has two different sides, and there's going to be a trigger, and we never know which side. So I made it really difficult for all of us.
No, you didn't make it super difficult, but it was a take I hadn't come across before, and so I'm really excited about it. It did take some figuring out in terms of how we were going to make that playable.
Yeah.
And just to go over that very quickly, so the XPG system, which is what Airship Daedalus use, is a stat plus skill based system. So you have the character has a set of stats which are raw ability, kind of innate talents, and then skills which are learned over time. So what we decided for these two sides of your personality, you're going to have the exact same stats: perception, willpower, strength, dexterity, etc. Those are all the same. Your body's abilities.
Right.
And you're going to have some similar skills because it's not a completely opposite personality. Whatever it was that happened to you is building on what was already there.
Right.
So we gave you a certain amount of skill points that are the same throughout for both characters. And then we turned you loose with a number of skill points for each personality that you got to design for yourself. And like that nurse-assassin dichotomy you were talking about, original Lucy, being this battlefield nurse, being highly skilled, has all of this medical skills and intelligence skills and other things. Lucy, this new personality, being an assassin, is able to drive a car, which original Lucy can't do, shoot a gun extremely well, these kinds of things. Very broad stroke.
Right.
You have some pretty fine details on there. And you also came up with a name for the character, Lucy Sweet and Sour. So we'll often refer to original Lucy as Lucy Sweet and the new personality as Lucy Sour. Pretty easy to remember which is which along those lines. We've also had to invent a new skill. We're going to talk about your backstory here in a second, but where we open up with the game, your personalities are starting to have flashes of memories from the other personality. So in order to try and make that playable, we gave you a new skill that we're just calling memory, and it's an intelligence skill. And when you switch personalities, you will make a memory check and see how much of what just happened. For instance, if you switch from sweet to sour, sour will make a memory roll to see how much she remembers of what just happened to sweet. So we could end up in situations where you come in as one of the two personalities having no clue what is going on. You could be in the middle of a firefight and switch to Lucy Sweet, and you're like, where the hell am I? Why are people shooting at me? I don't know anything. So you're going to have a lot to chew on and a lot to role play. And I'm really excited to see how you do that. Given your acting chops, I think it's going to be a blast.
Hopefully I can pull it off.
Oh, you can pull it off. I have no doubt. One last thing before we dive into your backstory. A few months ago in the UK, there was a game convention, and as part of this convention, there were volunteers running various games of all sorts, including obviously D&D. And people would just walk up and join the game with pre-made characters, and the dungeon master would run a scenario. And there was a lot of there was a lot of heat because one dungeon master ended up running a scenario where player characters were raped. And this was 2 women players, and there was no warning, no buy-in. It was just all of a sudden these players were forced into this situation. And being run by a stranger.
Do that.
Yeah. Horrible violation of boundaries and trust and all sorts of things. But as that was happening while you and I were having discussions about your character, and it got me thinking that we really, even though we know each other pretty well and have a good working relationship, that we need to set some boundaries, because you've created a character who is not fully in control of herself, who has other NPCs have an ability to manipulate and control her. And I wanted to make sure that you and I are on the same page in terms of what can and can't be done, and an understanding of what might happen in the future. So I want anyone who's watching the show to know that those are in place. For instance, as an assassin, you've never killed children. You're not a torturer. That's never been part of your skill set. Was there a third thing that was off limits, which I'm not remembering without looking at my notes?
I don't think so.
Okay. There's no sexual assault in your history. With what happened to you, there was no kind of sexual assault of any type. So those were the main no-go areas, and so we're not going to touch any of those with your character.
Cool.
The other piece of it was getting you to agree that you understand that there are times when you are going to lose control of your character as you switch personalities, and that there are things that might have been done of which you, the player, are not currently aware.
Yes.
And you're cool with that, given our understanding and the boundaries and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I think it's super important that we make those clear. Again, because of the way we're doing this, this is clearly something that has happened to you. We are not trying to create a real psychological condition here. We're not trying to get involved in a multiple personality disorder or anything like that. This was something that was forced on you. So, with that in mind, we're going to run down unless there's anything you would like to add, I want to run down your backstory really quickly.
Yeah, cool.
Which actually is, we had to create a backstory for 2 different characters sharing the same body, which was an interesting experience for me, and ended up being very detailed. So I'm going to be looking through my notes, but not going over absolutely everything I said to you. As I mentioned to you offline, we're going over backstories publicly, and I think that's pretty different from what other RPG games do. I think from what I've seen, they tend to tease out backstories as they're revealed through the plot and that kind of a thing. For what we're doing with this pulp action adventure, I think it's going to add more tension if people know the history that the players know. And the players don't always know everything, but what they do, the audience is going to know as well. So we're going to try that and see how that goes. And maybe I'm wrong and everybody else is right, but who knows? We'll find out. So, Lucy Mercier is Canadian. Her family has deep Canadian roots, some of the earliest French settlers on Canadian soil, and over the generations they moved their way west. You grew up in British Columbia. That's where you were born and raised. Your father was the foreman of a lumber mill there. Your mother took care of you and your younger brother, Luke. Although your mother was fairly sick very often, and so you ended up at a very young age being the caretaker for your mom and your younger brother. And even incidents like he breaks his leg while splitting wood, you're the one who manages that and gets the care and attention he needs, and then is very much taking care of him during his convalescence. You, very intelligent, very perceptive, ended up going to college and going to nursing school, graduating with honors in June of 1914, and you were widely recruited, although you chose to stay at the Vancouver General Hospital. That year, of course, the Great War breaks out, and Canada puts together the Canadian Expeditionary Force, and as part of that, there's the Canadian Army Medical Corps, the CAMC, and they're looking for volunteers, which you don't do. You're not particularly patriotic at this point. You don't feel that zeal and fervor. But they have no trouble. There's only 100 slots to start, and they have 2,000 applicants at the time. So that's not much of a problem. Your brother, on the other hand, is feeling that fervor, and he signs up and he joins with the 29th Battalion, known as Tobin's Tigers, and he gets shipped out in June of 1915. May 20th, 1915 is when he leaves, and you're there to see him off. Scared, nervous, your little brother, strong feelings, and all of that. He's stationed in the UK for July and August, and you get a lot of letters from him, and he's clearly feeling nervous about being shipped to the front lines, but determined. Near the end, though, his letters start to change. He talks about meeting someone, meeting a man. The only way he describes the man is by the name Jefferson, who opened his eyes to greater truths. He was fervent but vague, promising all the details when he saw you again after the war. You received 2 letters from him again after he arrived in France in September. Both were heavily redacted to the point where they were little more than well wishes and questions after your mom's health. In January 1916, you received word that he was missing in action. The official notice only said he went missing while on a scouting mission, but for whatever reason, you were absolutely certain he was still alive. But there was clearly not going to be any kind of official investigation, any attempt made. Just among the humongous casualties of World War I, it was just not even a blip on the radar. So you decided you were going to go over and find your brother. So you did volunteer for the Canadian Army Medical Corps, and given your credentials and the huge need, they expanded to 2,000. From the original 100 volunteers, the CAMC expanded to 2,000 by 1917. You were knocked at the top of the list, and you ended up getting stationed near Tobin's Tigers. So you were you weren't on the front lines, but you were you were treating these men. They were in some of the biggest battles of the war, including the Battle of Mount Sorel, which was the first battle shortly after you arrived in May 1916. They were also part of the Battle of the Somme, Vimy Ridge, Passchendaele, and those were just massive casualties. You saw and worked on many, many men. Many died under your watch, many more were saved. More than a few were sweet on you, which is not an uncommon occurrence. You were always driven to find your brother. You took any chance to get to the front, volunteering to be an ambulance driver, or at least go in, not a driver because you couldn't drive, but riding in the ambulance, being a stretcher bearer, these kind of things, and you'd ask after your brother after every chance you get. Not much word. A few people thought the patrol he was on was weird, this odd amalgamation of men from different units without much of a mission. Much later, you've heard word from people returning from leave in Paris that they had seen him, and on your next leave, you went into Paris looking where they looked, but you couldn't find any trace of anyone. The vast majority of people said, yeah, they must have been caught or either captured or killed. It's one of those things that happens. By the time the war was over in 1918, millions dead, the fields of Europe were just absolutely decimated, a muddy charnel house. Trying to find one person, one body in all of this is damn near impossible. Something just clicked, and you turned into this never say die optimist that I'm going to do this. I know he's still alive, and I can find him. You stayed in Europe for a few years, reading and rereading and memorizing his letters, everything he said. And once you were tracing the steps of the guy who said he saw your brother in Paris, and you heard a shopkeeper mention the name Jefferson, and you saw a very strikingly handsome young man leaving the shop, and so you tried to follow him but lost him in the crowds. You tried to get information from the shopkeeper, but he wouldn't give up anything. But that's as close as you ever got. Shortly after that, you received word that they had found your brother's body, and they brought it to Paris. And the timing of this made you super suspicious. So you broke in one night to perform an examination. The body's in an advanced state of decay, obviously, but you were able to recognize that the leg he had broken when he was 10 had shown no sign of a break. So you were absolutely convinced this is not your brother. And you tried to raise that through channels and were absolutely shot down. You're just a nurse, you don't know what you're doing, you're desecrating the dead, all of this stuff. And they bring in a doctor who says, no, absolutely, it's there, she missed it, because she's no good, she's incompetent and everything else. Huge furor over this. And your dad at this point is basically pleading, we need closure, your mom needs closure, bring the body home, which you agree reluctantly to do. But you are very convinced that your brother is still alive somewhere. Sorry, my notes are out of order. There we go. So you try to, in January 1921, you go back to Vancouver, you try to settle in around the life, but it really won't let you go. You receive an anonymous letter saying, I know what happened, and directing you to a hotel at the edge of town. When you checked into the room, you smelled something sickly sweet and then passed out. You woke up in the same room, disoriented the next morning, only it wasn't the next morning. You discovered it was November. In your missing time, your mother had passed away. Your father, believing you were off chasing ghosts instead of caring for the living, never wanted to see you again. You returned to work at the hospital, but over the next few months, you missed weeks at a stretch with no explanation, and so you were fired. And this missing time is another mystery, added to the mystery of whatever happened to your brother. On top of that, someone's anonymously putting money into your bank account, so you don't need to find another job. You're trying to track that down, you're trying to track down the letter writer, you're trying to track down anything. You've used that money to hire private eyes across Canada and America, chasing any lead, trying to find stuff in France. You're coming down with absolutely nothing. Until early 1927. You had a dream that you met one of the soldiers from the war. George Henry was your most serious suitor and was heartbroken when you turned him down. He asked you to marry him. In your dream, he was older and dressed as a civilian. He recognized you in a bar and approached you. Initially cold and aloof to him, his persistence changed your mood. You ended up in his arms sharing kisses. And even in the dream, this was shocking, as you never felt that way about him. You invited him to your place, but as you walk out of the bar, you realize you're not in Vancouver, but London. You lead him down the road, making a few turns. He laughs, asking where you're taking him. You promise your hotel is down just this way. You cut through an alley and stop halfway in. You cover his protests with a kiss, and you thrust a knife into his heart. You awake in shock. Your actions in the dream felt real, and with trepidation you contact your London PI and have him check. And George Henry was recently found the victim of a fatal mugging. More dreams follow. You with a rifle in your hands, and it feels good and right, staring down the scope at a man in a uniform and squeezing the trigger, driving a car, which you've never driven in your life, at high speeds and slamming another car off the road. And the more these dreams happen, the more they feel like memories instead of dreams. Friends in the medical community try to tell you you're suffering from shell shock, what we now call PTSD, and you recognize there are many ways shell shock can manifest, but this doesn't feel accurate to you. There's something about it that feels off. So you're still trying to find answers when in the summer of 1927, one of the PIs you've hired, Danny Long in San Francisco, mentions that he knows someone with extraordinary abilities and she might be able to help. You travel to San Francisco to meet Mandy Hart. Danny gives you her description and made arrangements for you to meet her at the bar of the New Palace Hotel. You arrive early and wait nervously when you hear a voice and feel dizzy, and things go black for Lucy Sweet. Lucy Sauer has very few memories. Her first memories of the mission. She wakes and she asks what the mission is. You receive orders and you travel. Your first memory is traveling to Japan and killing the premier. You don't know why, you don't really care, it's just the mission. You had many of these over the years. Finland in 1922, Mexico in 23, Paris in 1926, many of others. You don't recognize any kind of time in between then. Sometimes you think you should remember more. You should remember going to school or growing up or even your training, but you don't. You know your name, Lucy 4, and you're well trained in many skills. And you know what to do in most situations, but how you know how to do that is not known. You were able to shrug all those questions off until about January 1927. Mission took you to London. While placing yourself in position to observe your target, you were approached by a man you had never seen before, and he called out, "Lucy, Lucy Mercier. Why, I haven't seen you since the war." Not wanting to cause a scene, you bluffed your way through some small talk, trying to shed him and continue the mission, but he was very persistent. It became clear he was deeply smitten with whoever he thought you were, which wouldn't do at all. So you changed tactics and were receptive to his advances, and you asked him to join you at your hotel. You led him away from your target location, found a secluded alley, and thrust a knife in his heart. You began to stage the crime scene, and then stopped. Looking at the dead man's face, you had a memory. You saw his smile as he asked you to marry him, and the way he tried to mask the pain when you said no, and you felt the awkward pain of breaking his heart, but knowing it was the right thing to do. You shook it off, staged the scene, and completed the mission. And you didn't tell your handlers about the man during the debriefing, although you should have. Over the next few missions, you would get more flashes, scenes from the war, scenes of riding in the ambulance, holding men's hands, working, healing instead of killing. And these really started to drive you to try and do some research. So you started researching the name the man called out to you. And while you're on a mission in Toronto, you were able to find an article from the unveiling of the Nurses' Memorial in Ottawa in 1926, and many nurse veterans were pictured in front of the memorial, including Lucy Mercier, and you were looking at a picture of you. You completed your mission at that point, and to all outward appearances, you were the same, but inside, you're really struggling with these questions for the first time in Lucy Sauer's life, the first time in her memory. You resolved that the next time you were free, you were going to try and track down Lucy Mercier. You complete the mission, you go quiet, and then you're brought awake, and you're at a bar in an unknown town. And this is very unusual because this isn't, when you're brought up, you're given a mission directly in a controlled situation so you can plan. This is unusual. And a man with an Australian accent, a blonde man, Australian accent, scratchy beard, leans in and whispers, "There are 3 men following me, delay them so I can get away." And he pays for the drink that's in front of you. You turn and you see 3 men coming in overcoats and fedoras, and they couldn't stand out harder if they tried, and it really hurts you on a professional level. That is not how you sneak around in the summer. Idiots. So you grab your drink, stumble over laughing, brazenly saying, "I think my good time has arrived, gentlemen." They try to push you to the side, and you spill your drink on the one on your left. You're like, "Oh, you're so sorry you spilled my drink, but you can make it up to me for buying me another." "Woman, leave me alone." And he grabs your arm to push you. You twist and grab his arm, pulling it behind his back, kicking the back of his right knee. He falls to the ground, screaming as his arm is wrenched tighter. With your left arm, you punch the center one in the face. He stands in shock, so you hit him twice more in rapid succession, and he drops. Your orders were delay, not kill. You're not even sure if you're armed. These guys are. Still wrenching the first one's arm, you kick the third in the stomach. As he stumbles back, you reach under the first one's coat. Sure enough, there's a shoulder holster. You grab the gun when you hear a voice behind you. This won't do it all. There must have been a fourth the handler didn't see. You have an awkward grip on the gun. You try to turn and aim, but someone grabs your gun hand, and then there is a sudden blow to the base of your skull, and you fall into blackness. And that is where we are going to pick up when the game starts next month.
Yay!
Do you have any questions?
No, will I start the game? Which Lucy will I start the game as?
Oh, that's the other bit of mechanic. Thank you. When you are knocked unconscious, or forced unconscious, either drugged or knocked out or what have you, we are going to have a 50-50 chance as to which Lucy wakes up.
Oh, so I won't know?
You won't know. I won't know either. So we're going to roll, we use D12s in the XPG system. So 1 through 6, it's going to be Lucy Sweet. 7 through 12, it is going to be Lucy Sour. So yes, when the game first starts, we are going to roll and find out who's popping up to figure out what's happening in this situation.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
Lisa, I am super excited to be playing this with you. I think it's going to be a great mix. I'm curious to see how you're going to handle this with other characters, what you're going to tell them, what you're going to hide from them, all of that good stuff. So,
yeah,
looking forward to it.
I'm so excited.
Anything else you want to talk about tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, just I can't wait to see where this goes. Thank you guys so much for bringing me on board. It's right up my alley, and letting me have some creative fun with creating Lucy. And I can't wait. I'm like, is it already September yet?
Yeah. September, not October. September. We'll start in September.
Yep.
Fantastic. And you're going to be online tomorrow on It's a Small World?
Yeah, I'll be on it 12 p.m. Pacific time. I'm playing a game called The Evil Within 2. It's terrifying and great, hard, and I'll probably be finishing that game up. It'll probably take me the rest of this week to finish it. It's pretty long. But yeah, be on tomorrow at noon.
Fantastic.
Yay.
Lisa, thank you for your time tonight. We will talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Everybody else, thank you for joining us. Have a great night.